Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I haven't been particularly active in the last few weeks because I've been a bit ill, so there haven't been too many videos, and not too much shaving either, although my hair is looking quite glorious. You can tell this is going to be a serious video, by the way, because I'm not wearing any orange, so don't expect too much humour in this one. This is a response to Vince Venturella's topic of the week on diversity and inclusion in wargaming. I don't normally respond to these things because I generally have a lot of my own video projects to be worked on, but this one spoke to me because it's something I've been interested in for quite a while. And it's a very, very broad topic, and Vince touched on quite a lot of different issues. I would recommend that you watch his video first, because I don't want to retread any ground that he's already covered, so hopefully I won't. Maybe there'll be a little bit of an overlap, but I've got a few of my own points I want to make, and this video may end up being a bit all over the place and back and forth, because not all the points I want to make link together exactly. I may have to chop this up at the end to make it all nice and coherent and easy to follow. So I'm going to be focusing more on self-moderation of your language and speech, and ways that you can avoid alienating people from the community. Now, as soon as you start talking about limiting what people should be saying, a lot of people go a bit crazy and start standing up for their freedom of speech rights. And at this point I'm going to point out, no one is telling you that you can't say something. You can say whatever you want. I'm just telling you that there may be consequences for what you're saying. Not in the forms of me coming around there and beating you up, but in the forms of maybe you alienating someone from the community. So I'm going to outline 4 types of people that I identified in this community, or in any community really. And obviously it's not always that simple. You can work it down into sub-factions as well, but I think these are the 4 basic groups. So as an example, let's go with racist language or racist jokes, just for this example, but you could easily switch it out for sexist, homophobic, whatever. So, in group 1 you'd have people that just wouldn't make racist jokes at all, wouldn't use any racist slurs whatsoever, at least not intentionally. And then as soon as they find out that something is a racist term, they would just stop using it. And those people aren't really going to offend anybody, not going to alienate anyone from the community. Group 2, you have people who, in their little close-knit group of friends, they will quite happily make racist jokes to each other. As an example, maybe they're all white and they will make jokes about black people. Maybe the jokes are legitimately racist, maybe they're not, maybe they don't actually mean it. But because they're in company who they think are going to understand that they're not actually racist and that they're just messing around, maybe they're quite comfortable making those jokes because someone isn't going to hear it and maybe misunderstand the context. Maybe it's an inside joke that other people wouldn't understand. Maybe they are actually racist and they just want to make those jokes in their own little bubble without having to worry about the fallouts that the rest of the world might have, the consequences of other people judging their views. So those people, worst case scenario, they're going to be perpetuating the idea that it's okay to tell those kind of jokes, and maybe their friends will go off and use that kind of language around other people. Best case scenario, it just stays in that little bubble, doesn't affect anyone else, probably won't alienate people from a community. Group 3, this is the main troublesome group as far as I'm concerned. These are the people that have the opinion that I'll say whatever the hell I want, and too bad if someone gets offended. Okay, I'll come back to that one in a minute. Group 4 are people that specifically target someone for their hate speech, if you will. They'll pick out someone they know will be offended by it, and they target those words directly at that person. I'm not focusing too much on this group because I don't think there's really much you can do about that. They're just trolls, basically. And all you can really do is whatever the law allows if they cross a certain line, or just ignore it. That's all you can do. Telling them to stop isn't going to help because that's the attention they're after, probably. But I want to focus on group 3. The people that maybe don't mean any harm. They just think they should be able to tell any kind of joke, say whatever they want at any time, in any location, and it should be okay. And people don't have a right to get offended about it. Or if they do get offended, it's just too bad, they can choose not to be there, would be their view. And the way Vince put it in his video was that there must be something everyone cares about, And if people are constantly either joking about it, making light of it, talking about it in a derogatory manner, then it is going to affect you somehow. Obviously, certain topics are more likely to fall into that category than others. For example, if you're in a room full of strangers and start making dead baby jokes, then it's not that unlikely someone in there might have recently lost a child. That's not going to be an ideal setting for them in those circumstances if you're throwing that kind of material around. So to give an example of something that I've actually witnessed, it was at a Wargaming event. I'm not going to go into too many specifics because I'm not interested in particularly shaming individual people or anything here, because I don't think the people involved in this one actually meant any harm. But at an event, there was a kind of a side room where there'd been some kind of LAN party sleepover next to the tabletop event, and there were people sleeping in there. And one of the jokes that was kind of echoing around the room, which I heard from multiple people, the gist of it was, don't accidentally stumble into that room or you'll get raped. Which seems kind of unnecessary to use that kind of humour. You're in a room, many of the people you don't know very well. You may know some of them quite well and you know they would be fine with you using those kind of jokes, but you don't know everyone in there intimately. And I'm not even going to say, well, there were women in there, that makes it inappropriate, because it's not just women that can be victims of this kind of thing. And if you just look around a room and see, well, there's this group of men, they're all like over 6 foot tall, big rugby type builds, surely nothing like that could have ever affected them, so it'll be fine to make these kind of jokes. You don't know that for a fact, and maybe they suffered from something when they were a child, maybe they just have a relative or a friend who's been through some kind of experience that sets something off in their mind when they hear terms like that just joked about. So, like I said, I don't think the people that were making those jokes meant any harm by it, but someone who was, I know people don't like the term triggered, and that's become a bit of a subject of ridicule online, but people who, something is triggered in their mind when they hear those kind of terms, those kind of jokes, especially in a place they're not expecting it, then if that's something they're constantly exposed to, maybe they're just not going to be turning up to events anymore. Because I can't really see someone standing up in a wargaming environment and saying, well, actually, you know, I was a victim of that and I'd rather you didn't joke about it. Maybe they carry around a lot of shame, maybe they just don't want to be the victim of ridicule. So I think they're more likely to just slink away and not attend those events in the future. Another example that I've heard many times in a lot of different wargaming circles, it has to be said, is equating people being gay with weakness. One example I can remember recently, a unit of elves were about to be charged in the rear, and of course all the inevitable jokes came up, and then someone came out with something like, well, they're just wimpy little elves, they should love that. That kind of thing. And if there were gay people in there, I imagine they probably wouldn't have appreciated that kind of humour. Equating who they're sexually attracted to with some kind of weakness. And maybe they would be put off the community. I've spoken to a few gay people in the community who, at one time or other, have backed away because of that kind of macho attitude that people, for some reason, feel is necessary in the community. What it comes down to really is common sense. The larger the group of people, the more of them you don't know that well. You don't know what experiences they've had in the past. Chances are, some of them have been through some kind of trauma in their life. Most people have had some kind of traumatic experience that they wouldn't want to continually relive, with people making light of it or joking about that kind of topic. And often people that are alienating others from the community probably don't actually realise what they're doing. Because, like I was talking about before, people often don't just stand up and tell you that they've become offended. And there's a bit of a stigma attached to even doing that. So when people say, well, I've never experienced anything like this in the wargaming community, I'd never do anything like that, maybe they actually have and they just don't realise. People do need to look at themselves. There is some responsibility for your own actions here. People need to think about if what they're saying can potentially harm other people. Why would you want to push people away from this community that's already so niche? Of course, not everyone just sees this as a hobby. A lot of people want to make their careers in this industry as well. So the community growing to include more people from more diverse backgrounds, to spread the wargaming love around the place, that's going to benefit everybody. This, of course, is just a very small slice of the overall pie in terms of this discussion. There are a lot of other areas that can be branched out into, and I'm sure other people in their response videos are going to cover that as well. And I'm sure Vince is going to come back to it at some point. So I want to thank Vince for bringing this topic to the forefront. I have been planning on doing a podcast on topics like this for quite a while. As I mentioned a few months ago, it's just been difficult finding the people that I wanted to be involved in it and getting them all to be available at the same time. That's been incredibly difficult to accomplish for some reason. But this topic of the week was a good opportunity to just get something out there in that direction. And hopefully the podcast will be something that comes along soon. Because the wargaming community does have some problems. People can hide from the issues or pretend they don't exist if they want. They can pretend that there's no such thing as sexism or racism or homophobia or transphobia or xenophobia in the wargaming community. But I've personally seen all of those things in action. They are out there. And as long as they're there and people aren't standing up against them, then they're going to continue to just fester and they're going to push people away. Anyway, let me know what you think, and I'm hoping that more people are going to respond to Vince's video as well. I want to hear what more people out there in the community have to say on this topic. If there's another area of it you want to zoom in on and bring to light, then go nuts. And I'll talk to you all very, very soon. Ta-ta!